Welcome to Chatting GPT, the podcast where I get to speak to interesting humans who are doing great things with AI. I'm your host, Mary Rose Lyons, the founder of the AI Institute, and today I have a very interesting guest, Charlie Corcoran, who is the head of technology, architecture and data at Sisk. There he oversees how technology and data are being rolled out across this large construction business. Charlie, you're very welcome to the show.
Thanks very much, Mary Rose. Nice to meet you.
I have loads of questions I want to ask you because Sisk it's so ahead and it's such a role model for others in the sector. My first question to you would be, what was that pivotal moment where you realised that AI was going to be essential to the way the business evolved?
So I don't think there was actually one kind of light bulb moment. I think there's been more of a convergence of different technologies over the last couple of years that benefit from the use of AI. I think if we look kind of at our projects, they're becoming complex, they're becoming more involved, far more regulation, more administration, more interfaces with internal and external parties. AI can really help with that from a productivity perspective. It can take some of those mundane tasks off some of our engineers and let them focus on the more high value and value add tasks. It gives them a chance to improve their operational efficiency and go after the tasks that are driving value across our site teams and across our project teams. The other area is there's a huge amount of maturity now around BIM, which is building information management and the use of models and the use of data across our sites. So over the last couple of years, the big effort that's been put in by a large number of parties up and down our supply chain to really drive that. There's a real area AI can support through many different ways. So it really hasn't been one pivotal moment. I think it's just been a combining of these different technologies. An example might be our new City West office. I say it's new, we're in there about a year and a half now, but there's a huge amount of IoT sensors and digital twin that sits in the back of that, controls all of our heating systems, our quality sensors, all that kind of stuff. There's a huge amount of opportunity there for AI to be influential in how we manage the building, how the building is managed going forward. So as I say, it wasn't really one, but kind of a mixture of all these technologies coming together over the past couple of years.
Fantastic. So how do you actually choose what you're going to prioritize? Like there's so many different technologies and it's so far reaching within the organization. How do you choose which projects you're going to really drive?
Operational efficiency is our key kind of metric. How can we really improve the life of our staff and how they're doing their tasks throughout the day? So giving them signal from all the noise that they have to deal with. Anything that has that high level of impact and can impact their lives and make their lives a lot easier is how we contribute to it. There's a bit of a challenge with AI at the moment, and it's not just within construction, but kind of across industry where it's getting AI to be used within the value stream. An example I was given a couple of weeks ago was, would you fly in a plane that was designed by generative AI? And what would be your level of comfort in that? So how many companies are really influencing their value stream with the use of AI? Now, in construction, we can through generative design and risk management through schedules, but we haven't seen the full rollout of that yet. A lot of that has been through other organizations at smaller third parties. Where we have seen it is general productivity, really improving how people are managing their inbox or managing the huge amount of tasks they have to do on a daily basis. So that's really important for us, is how can we make the lives of our staff better? How can we improve their operational efficiency? How can we drive that for them?
So tell us a story of, like, say, some of your colleagues whose lives have been positively impacted in this way.
Well, just one example we only rolled out a couple of days ago was actually our internal intranet. So basically we're using a product now called Clarity from Microsoft to actually sit over our intranet. It can actually view all of the usage of the environment and see all the different sessions that people have engaged with on the site. What we can do now using generative AI is very quickly analyze all those sessions. So we might have had 1,800 sessions last week on one day. We can very quickly analyze that data, understand what people were using the site for, and maybe improve the UI or the UX around how that site is performing. So we can see if people are rage clicking. So if someone comes in and clicks a button 10 times, we can see, well, actually, what were they reading? Were they reading the expenses policy? Were they reading the IT fair usage policy? Were they reading the AI policy? And we can tailor our team to actually go after that. And another project we're looking at as well, this isn't in production yet at the moment, but looking at our SOR data capture. If you have a safety observation report on site, there can be up to 3,000 people on your site. And if you get one from each person every day, or one from each person during the week, that's quite a lot of information for our health and safety teams to identify. So how do you get the signal out of that noise? How do you ensure that you're going after the right thing? You're going after the area where there's a safety issue, rather than going after something that says the ketchup is missing in the kitchen or something like that. So how do you provide those guys with that level of the ability to actually analyze that data really quickly and come up with the right decision?
And how are you going to solve that problem?
Literally by using generative AI to analyze that data really quickly and provide them with a triage service. So rather than having 10 people triaging all of those SORs every day, you could have possibly 2 people and an AI tool enabling them, and the other 8 people are going out and taking action based on those activities. So really it's about shifting the lens from the resource managing the amount of data that's coming in to the resource getting the triaged information and actioning that triaged information.
That sounds like a classic customer service type of thing, except it's been applied to health and safety, where you've got a lot of data coming in and you can read the ones that aren't important and respond to them in a textual way and then apply your humans onto the higher risk ones.
Exactly. Yeah. So we're able to classify those SORs. We're able to take the existing data that we have, understand what's good and what was bad in that data set, and then use that for any future triaging. So we have all the data. The data is all there. We've been captured across our sites the last 7-8 years. So we can use that information to train the models that we get an accurate analysis of new SORs that come in across our sites. And across most of our sites, we wouldn't have a one-to-one. If you look at somewhere like Glass Bottle in Dublin, there's probably 1 to 8. So for every one Sisk person, there's probably 8 other subbies or supply chain partners on the site. So being able to triage that information, action it quickly, they're feeling that they're getting responded to as well. So it benefits not just our own internal staff, but also the morale and all the other people that are working across our sites.
Brilliant. So that leads me on to the next question I was going to ask you. Do you think we're heading towards a situation, or we're maybe in it already, whereby one part of the construction sector, the likes of yourselves and some of the others that we're working with, are ahead with their use of AI, whether it's in like design or administrative tasks or what have you, and then there's others who aren't? So what impact does this have on these multi-team projects? How is that being managed?
We've seen that already with the advent of BIM and the advent of other technologies on our sites. Some companies are ahead, and it will be driven by 2 things. It'll be driven by the client and be driven by industry. So it'll be driven by the client in that they want to see us using these technologies. They're helping us embrace these technologies. They're requiring that it's embraced by the full supply chain across their projects, or by industry, where there's a specific standard that's set up, as we've seen with BIM or information management, where there's now standards, ISO standards around how we should be delivering these things. There's always going to be that difference between parties on sites, and there's always going to be that difference between the delivery partners on sites. But I think with AI, the curve to actually get up to speed is a lot smaller. It's going to take people a lot less time to catch up because the technology is there. It can be used very quickly. It can be adapted really quickly. If you've good data, if you've good information, if you've good people running it, it doesn't take much time to actually bring it up to speed. So I wouldn't see it as being as much of a chasm as something like BIM probably would have been in the past.
Oh, that's really good. That's positive. And I think as well, the more that organisations like yourself are kind of shown to be leading, it will bring on some of the maybe the later adopters just by seeing the benefits, as opposed to coming on board based on fear. Because there's been a lot of messaging around that whole thing about if you don't start using it, you're going to get left behind. But I think it's also should be around start using it, and then you're going to see all these amazing benefits.
We've seen that even at the rollout ourselves. There's a certain cohort of people that are going to put their hands up and say, we want to use this today. And they're the people who adopt it and take it and run with it. There'll be the next cohort of people that will actually learn from those 20% of people and actually help them and help engage. And then there'll be a certain percentage that just won't use it at all. And we'll have to take them along. That's just the way it is.
We specialise at bringing along, we call them the cynics. So when we have kind of teams, you've got the believers and you've got the visionaries and then you've got the cynics. And I particularly love dealing with cynics because in the start of kind of courses and programs with us, they're the ones who are like, they're asking all the critical questions and their body language is very closed. And by the end of it, it's like they're the ones saying, I'm the go-to expert now behind my team. I love it, I love that turnaround actually. It's one of the joys. So talk to me about shadow AI. It's a huge thing. It's come up again. We did some research over the course of the summer 2025 and I was actually quite surprised by the high percentages reported of shadow AI. Tell me about how you handle it. Do you have systems in place to prevent your employees using external LLMs, without official approval?
So we're lucky. We do have Microsoft E5 throughout our environment. So we do have a lot of tools within that to actually support the management of AI and LLM usage. It's important that we understand why they're using it as well. We've seen someone using DeepSeek, for example. Now, they weren't using it for commercial use, but it was important to understand why were you using it or what was the reason. And we found that person was just curious about using the actual model more so than actually using it for any particular purpose. They'd read about it in the news and they were curious about it.
Curious.
Curiosity, yeah.
I'm hearing again and again. I'm making it the word of 2020. There's so many curious people and curious minds, and they're the people who are winning in this new era.
Exactly. So we have those tools to be able to see if people are using it, how they're using it, and we also have a certain level of data loss prevention as well within those tools, so we can see if people do upload documents that are relevant to Sisk. So it does flag it to us and show that people are using it, but we can turn those tools off as required. We don't at the moment. We don't turn off a lot of things. We want people to be able to see what they can use. That might change in the future where we say, well, actually, Microsoft Copilot is our go-to tool. But what I do say to people is, if you're not paying for the tool, if you're not paying for the product, you are the product. So if you're putting personal information, I don't just mean Sisk information there, I mean your PPS number, your financial information up into ChatGPT, it is storing that information for you and can regurgitate that not just to you but to others as well. So be very conscious about who you use those tools. An example I got from someone on LinkedIn last week was ask ChatGPT to tell you your faults, and it will come back with what it's learned from you based on your prompts over the last couple of months, or what it knows about you. Ask it to know about me. And it's very interesting. A lot of people get spooked out by it, but as you see how quickly it can learn about who you are, your personal information, all that kind of stuff. And again, if you're not paying for it, you are the product.
There was a prompt, somebody else had given me this one a while ago on LinkedIn, and it was about ask ChatGPT, it's a tough love question. What's the one thing I should be asking you to help me that I'm probably too afraid to ask? Try that one. You'll be floored. You'll be like, oh my God. I think though, as Copilot is evolving, to me, in my experience, it's like the kind of people who use tools outside of the Copilot environment within a Copilot organization are ones that are kind of looking for that more creative answer. I think that as Copilot is evolving and it's really improving, there's less of a need to kind of I want to go over to ChatGPT or Claude because it gives me something better in terms of writing style, let's say.
Exactly. The speed at which they're moving at Microsoft is impressive. The speed at which the models are being integrated into their own environment it's very impressive. And the last version, it was within a couple of hours of the launch. So we don't feel there should be a need to go out to it now if you want to try it, but in essence, it's there available to you in Copilot.
Yeah. It's really cool. So tell me this about use cases. What are the main differences between people who are doing work with, say, document processing and people who are doing work with computer vision? And how are these projects managed differently, if at all?
Well, actually, we've been using computer vision for quite a while now at different kind of areas. We've used it in the past for document analysis, taking a huge amount of concrete cube tickets to analyze them really quickly. Plant team, for example, have used vision for quite a long time now for analysing when someone comes in an exclusion zone within a plant environment. So if you're on top of a bit of a noisy digger and it's chugging away, you might not see the person that's walking up behind you within your exclusion zone before you swing the bucket around. So being able to have the machine actually analyse that environment for you without you having that 360 vision, it's been really powerful. And we've had those use cases in place now for probably 2 to 3 years, and they've been very successful across our plant department. Regarding generative AI, then the use cases are, again, back to the same point. It's around that operational efficiency and that large amount of data. So where do we have somewhere that there's a huge amount of processing going on where we could possibly put a generative AI agent over the top of it, be it contract reviews or, again, SOR capture or analyzing huge amounts of data captured by Microsoft Clarity. How can we use those tools to support the guys to make better decisions? So if you think of the kind of 3 tiers, it's operational efficiency is the first kind of level. How can we make your life better? Number 2, how can we improve your decision making? So can we take all that signal, all that noise, produce a signal from it? And then number 3, how can we innovate and grow on that? So if you're not spending all that time then analysing those contracts, what are you doing that's a value add on top of that as well? How are you innovating or growing beyond?
Tell me this, do you have metrics on each of those 3 levels? Like have a kind of a North Star metric that you're going after?
Realistically, at the moment, it's probably hours worked. So that's kind of our starting point, and we try and do a cost calculation based on that. But it's not as much about the hours that you save. It's again about what you do with the hours that you have saved. If I saved legal, I'll just take them as an example, but I say save them 20 hours of time analysing contracts. What are they doing with that next 20 hours? What's the next value add on top of that? Because really the value is what you're doing outside of the operational efficiency. And if the team is working 120% and now it's working at 100%, maybe that is the value add. It's possibly intangible, as in it's better time for life, or it's more time at home, or it's you're not working weekends, or you're not working after hours. Maybe that is the intangible benefit, but it can be very difficult to quantify that. So at the moment we're looking at operational efficiency for the task you were doing versus the task it is today that is AI enabled. What is the differentiator between the two?
I think it's great that you're speaking about that, because one of the things that like we're really strong on is that we show people how to save time, but it's mindful use of that time saved. And I'm a big advocate for you finally get to go home on time, or use that hour and a half you saved on like deeper thinking, deeper learning, like not just filling the space with more blah blah kind of admin tasks. So I'm really glad to hear you speaking to that within Sisk as well.
Yeah, I think the Microsoft study that came out probably about 9 months ago now at this stage, where they found that I think it was half of their staff spent more time in meetings after they'd gotten co-piloted in their environment. So that might be a good use of their time, but was it a good use of their time? How can they analyze that? How can they understand the value of that? I think that's really what we're trying to solve for. And the other piece as well around the critical thinking, I think that's vitally important. Not just for, okay, now you have more time to critically think, but making sure that the tool doesn't replace your critical thinking. So is there something you're missing here? You're taking an email, you're summarizing it, you're not actually reading it and analyzing and understanding what the content of it is. You're not losing that critical thinking, because that's vitally important.
I always say to people who are worried about the critical thinking piece, instead of putting in AI at the start and doing the prompty prompt and then you're going to check it as the human in the loop, why don't you, if you're worried about losing your critical thinking skills, you do your writing as you would have done and then get it to critique your work. So you're using your brain. So I think that kind of works for people who have that particular fear. I think though what you're speaking to though, like, is that there is that kind of global inability to sort of say, okay, here is one measure for an organization that has brought it in, because it is, isn't it, measuring like it's the personal productivity. It's like John has saved this many hours and Mary has saved this many hours, and then it's kind of totaling that up. I'm interested to know that that's the scenario you're facing, as well as the kind of organizations that we deal with. It is one by one, and I don't think a lot of finance directors can get their heads around that.
Yeah, and you kind of have to go to that next level down. If you're saving the 20 hours for legal, again, what are they doing next? If you're saving the 20 hours for treasury, what are they doing next? And the value could be really skewed. You could have, say we take treasury, for example, and we save them 2 hours a week on something small, but maybe the 2 hours that they've saved allows them to make a 10 million euro investment in an organization as a huge amount of return. So is that calculated as the value return of the AI tool? Yeah. It's not. But, if we were being honest and scientific about it, that's probably where it should go down to, where has it saved you the amount of time that you can now do something different? So if we look at it, it's probably just productivity from an hour's perspective of removing what people perceive as their mundane tasks, a task that could be done outside of their day-to-day.
And do you have a kind of a number, like have an overall productivity percentage that you've achieved?
Not yet at the moment, but we're working on that as part of our strategy to understand what would that number look like.
Wow, fantastic. So we're moving on to some off-topic curveballs, I guess. What's your biggest buzzword wince from the space? What word do you just cringe when you hear it? It's overused.
I don't think it's a particular word, but I think when people give it human kind of attributes.
Anthropomorphizing.
That's the word, yeah. I was in a presentation with someone who kept calling it her. So I think that just unsettles me a little bit.
That's like people calling their car a name.
Yeah, exactly. That's one thing that makes me feel a bit uneasy about it. Giving it human attributes or seeing it as, they kept on saying it's a member of our team, to which you kind of go, well, is it really? Is that really how you see it? Or is it a tool? It'd be like someone calling their Outlook inbox a name. So that's probably the one that kind of gives me the most pause for concern.
Yeah, well, that's a good one. It's a good point, actually. And what about new skills? Like if you could instantly give every project manager in construction one new skill in relation to AI adoption, what would that be?
It's a very interesting question. It'd probably be the skill of using the tool in the right way. Back to your point around the critical thinking. So it'd be the ability to understand the limitations of the skill and the limitations of the actual tool itself and what it is good and not good for. So back to your point around critical thinking, the ability to say, well, actually, here's something I've prepared. Maybe critique this versus I want you to actually create it for me in the first instance. So if I could get that kind of understanding for people, I think that'll be really beneficial for us.
That'd be a win. Brilliant.
Yeah, 100%.
So one last thing, for anyone listening from a company who is struggling to move beyond AI pilots into more of a full-scale deployment like what you've done, what would be your piece of advice?
I think where we've had real benefit is the user groups. So I think the user groups have been really beneficial where people are learning from each other and we're growing that knowledge organically.
Would you have in a user group?
So it depends. It depends on the function. So we've had up to probably about 35 in some, and some as small as 4 or 5 based on the function.
All the same function or kind of cross-function?
We started cross-functionally and now we've gone down to individual functions. So we've been more generalist at the start and kind of giving people just letting people bounce off each other at the start. And
Yeah.
then as we got more and more detailed, we've kind of siphoned them off into more kind of functional level, because there's only so much you can learn at that top level. It's where you're within your own function, you're understanding what does this person do with it, what do I do with it, how does it work, and how we're completing our tasks. That's really beneficial.
And you give people time, like, to kind of come together on this within the user groups, or?
Yeah, so there's usually about a 3 or 4 week schedule on them. So the first week will be an introduction. Here's what it is, here's what it can do, here are some examples we have ourselves. Does anyone have any questions? People go away, they'll play with it, they'll experiment with it, they come back and they'll say, well, I tried to do this and it didn't work, or how could I do this something different? Or is there a way we could organize this in a different way? And we found that that's kind of really, no one is going to sit down and do a course in AI and then all of a sudden know AI. It's through, as you said, the curiosity, it's through that experimentation, it's through the learning to understand,
Yeah.
how can I actually use this tool? How can I use it in my own way? Where's examples of where it's being used well or how it's working well? So within those functional groups, we're allowing those people to explore and challenge themselves, both within their team and across different areas as well. And we found that's been really beneficial. It's really kind of driven the adoption massively across the organization.
Brilliant. And then do you have like kind of AI kind of champions then who are kind of like leading the user groups, or do you just make it like a kind of a more organic?
So currently we have our product managers that are the people that are managing the user groups, but eventually it'll be functional champions that will actually lead them. People who are specialists in a particular area will lead them and they'll share that information with others. But the idea is we have the general Microsoft Copilot usage, and then we have the Microsoft 365 Copilot usage. So we have kind of two separate groups, one who are using it more for their email management, their Teams management, and then the more general chat usage then as well on top of that. So it's been a mixture of both.
Yeah, that sounds fantastic. Well, listen, congratulations on what you've achieved, and I love the fact that it's so people-centred. I love the fact that you're measuring productivity gains in terms of hours and then actually how people are redeploying that time. That really speaks to my heart. So thank you very much for joining us, Charlie. I would love to share your link to your LinkedIn in the show notes if anyone wanted to reach you. Thank you for coming on the show. It's great actually seeing leading companies like yourself opening up and sharing about how you're using AI, because in the earlier days there was a lot of, can we talk about this? Can we share it? And I think now we're kind of, especially 2026, it's wide open. We need to shout it out. So thank
100%.
you.
Thanks very much, Mary Rose. Appreciate you
And
having me.
anyone who's listening, if you enjoyed this show, please give us a follow or give us a share. We are on every couple of weeks and we bring on leaders who are implementing AI in a really interesting way for conversations. So see you again on another episode of Chatting GPT.